What kind of shoes does a baker wear?
All right, Ben, I think I got it. It's wonky. I'm gonna have to remember how that seems to be happening.
What kind of shoes does a baker wear? Penny loafers?
Ooh, loafers. Yeah, good job.
On my game tonight.
Okay, let me start the record. Only 13 minutes late due to some minor technical difficulties. I will call to order this special meeting of the Village of Shrewsbury Board of Trustees, February 22nd, 2021. This meeting is primarily a budget working session. All village board members are present. This meeting is primarily a budget working session. However, we do have a couple of other agenda items. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda that are needed?
I do want to add one item of business to discuss claiming the backhoe as no further use pending potential sale.
Okay. Vicki, when is our first? Is Chief first? And then Dustin?
Yes.
So we'll do the backhoe after the budget working session part. We do have several executive session items. My hope or plan, if no one is opposed, my hope or plan for tonight is to speak to the department heads about their specific budget items. Obviously, fire and EMS were set many months ago. Kind of just get in this case, Chief Nelson, Dusty, and then representatives from the farmers market, get their kind of thoughts of what they're looking for in the budget, and then give us a chance to ask any questions if we have any. And then I'm thinking, since we have a meeting scheduled for next week, that we will hold off on the line by line exercise until next week, when we'll go through the budget with a more of a fine tooth comb and try to avoid other agenda items for next week. There is also a discussion I want to have about wages, which will impact what we do with next week's budget. So that's my plan, unless there's anything else that derails us along the way. With that, item number 3 on the agenda is the formal introduction of local law. I believe it'll be 1 of 2021, which is our annual tax cap override. This is just a formality to introduce it tonight. Morgan, I would like to schedule the public hearing for that local law for our March regular meeting.
Okay.
So Monday, March 8th, 7 p.m. will be the public hearing for this annual ritual of ours to override the statutory tax cap, should it be necessary to adopt a budget with a tax levy increase of greater than 2%. Item number 4 is our budget working session, so we will dive right in. We have letting Jessica back in. Looks like she got bounced. Welcome back, Trustee Giles. Not sure exactly when you got bounced, so you probably missed. We just introduced the local law that will allow us to override the tax cap limitations should it become necessary to pass a budget that exceeds the 2% statutory tax cap. And so we will hold a public hearing for that at our regular meeting in March, now that it has been formally introduced. Moving right along, our next item is, as I said, our budget working session. We have Chief Nelson with us to go over his the police department budget and what he has in mind, anything he sees either problematic, positive, or negative, anything that's on your mind. Take it away, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Upon review and working with Vicki, I did make some adjustments with the budget conscious and lack of money. A couple of things I would suggest, along with some changes I made to a couple of the lines, is instead of the standardized 3% for the full timer, a 2% increase, and a hold on the crossing guards salary for where it is right now. And then I also, with last year's budget for the 2021 budget, forecasting ahead, and with COVID, my expenditures weren't as great as expected. However, with the unforeseeable future and things with training and other things that may cause an expense, I did cut a few lines from the contractual line, fuel line, which, you know, in the grand scheme is a savings. However, which is offset by the implementation in the 5-year contract for the body cameras, which I'll say negates but offsets a little bit. And looking at the lines which caused a little increase to payroll was from the previous year, taking sergeant's salary from 30 to 35 caused the increase in just the payroll line without the other lines that I can't control between the insurances and retirement. Things did cause the overall payroll line to go up. On that, if you look at the budget for the department and from previous, you can see the differences that were made and adjustments that were made that saved a few dollars. I was trying to get as close as I could to the previous year, but the payroll is one of the things that is really more out of my control, though, even though the contractual lines I could adjust and mess with, but I have cut without knowing the unforeseeable future of expenditures, maintenance, and upkeep. As I speak about maintenance and upkeep, along our reserve vehicle line is the older model police vehicle is costing more, in my opinion, to maintain than it's really amounting to be worth. So as we move forward in the future is to replace that vehicle sometime during the 21-22 budget, hopefully for the fall of 21. But other than that, I really don't have other things to explain or talk about that are glaring that would need explanation.
I have a couple of questions, but others first. Any thoughts, comments, questions for Chief?
I have a quick question. I've always wondered why there are so many police cars. Do you think it might be time to just let that one retire on its own without replacing?
And actually, it's been discussions with Vicky a couple times. However, when the necessity of things that do arise, when we have our details and hopefully getting back into the grassroots and other things, and vehicles go down and out of service and break, the lack of having a extra vehicle would hamper the function of the department. And Ben, I have considered that, but in the overall scheme and compared to other departments in looking at expenses, it's a necessity more than it is just a want.
Could you just remind us what vehicles we have? I don't have that number.
All right, we have the oldest one is a 2000 Ford Explorer, and that one was where we replaced the engine a couple years ago when I first got here. Then we have the 2015 Ford Explorer, which we spent $1,800 to get that wiring and the function of the vehicle up to date. It's still out of date from the standards in today's technology with equipment and wiring. So that's why the necessity to future repairs on that vehicle will be forthcoming. I.e. the computer laptop in both the Ford Explorers are outdated. So it's a 2013 and 2015. And to the schedule replacement, I believe is 22-23 or 23-24 is for the 2015 to be replaced. But again, they are, the maintenance and upkeep is becoming, in my opinion, more than really what the car overall is worth.
So in the Dropbox, in the 21-22 budget info folder, not depending on how you have it ordered, there is a spreadsheet called Capital Replacement Cycle. So that is a combination of, actually Ben put this together for fire, and then I've duplicated it for EMS, police, and DPW. I'm not going to guarantee you that all the vehicles are 100% up to date because I haven't looked at this very closely since the last budget season. But police, you'll see there are 4 total vehicles, one of which is the chief's SUV, and then there's the 2 Fords and the 1 car. So the 2013 we do actually have scheduled to replace in 2021, so that this fall would be better since that's next budget cycle. The 2015 we have scheduled to replace at some point in calendar 2023, and whether that's early or late will depend on what the budgets look like.
Thanks.
Anything else for Chief?
I guess I'm just wondering why it looks like maybe payroll information is missing for 2020. Is that, and this is my first budget cycle, of course. So is that something we address later, or Vicki needs to drop in, or?
What do
You
you
looking for
mean?
individual officer payroll information, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, I see that the column is there. It just looks blank from my view. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
The adopted line is there.
But the actual is missing, right? I don't see actual.
Yeah, I don't do each officer individually, just
Okay.
the totals.
Jess, you do have the budget for the overall payroll line, do you not?
I'm having like super duper technical difficulties. So let me just resend my question and I'll come back to it if I don't find it.
Okay. Chief, what do we have, or what do you have in mind for the police contractual line? We've got it, we had it at 20 last year. You've only spent 5 and change, and we're dropping it to 17. What are you thinking of sliding in there?
Well, that's the other thing, that with the unknown, and then looking at the budget numbers that I received, where I'm at currently, I have a few outstanding things. However, with the previous, and again, the unknown is what I foresaw different applications and things before COVID set in. So that's why it's hard to say where to go to. With the past budget before I got here, of being set 15 was the number that was taken from, I believe, 25 to 15. So it's hard to say. I know there's some monies there that could be used, but it's hard.
Do you
to
have any?
forecast.
And I'm
Well,
not really
right now
worried
we're-
about the year we're in, right? I'm not really worried about the year we're in. I'm more thinking about the next budget year. Do you have items already planned for that 17, or is that just kind of a catch-all line?
No, it's not really a catch-all. It's without exact numbers. While we're falling into the expense and the future expense of replacing some of the technical things, be it computers, the camera system here in the station is outdated. Still working on estimates to get that. So I have ideas, and it's hard to say what the exact number would be, and to exhaust all funds, be it 15 or 17 for the calendar year of 21, 22. It's where I'm at. If there was some money to be slashed or had, it would be in that line. But how much
And-
of it?
And the training line is 2,500 enough if we have a more normal non-COVID year, and if we hire a second full-time officer?
Well, with upcoming training and diversity for an online school that is offered, it is 4 individuals that are sitting in one session for $500. So with trying to get the thing, and that's a future expense. So if I did half of the station, that's $1,000. So that would be taken out of that training line. But also another refresher and trainings that are virtual now, it's going to be another expense that aren't set with a monetary cost yet.
Right, so is 2,500 enough?
I think it would be adequate, just enough there right now. Again, I don't blame everything on COVID, but we had other trainings planned before all this set in. So I believe it's still $2,500 is enough.
Okay.
However, though, a thought I thought about before is if that line was, but I would love to have a dedicated line for it, but then we could utilize funds out of the contractual, but I would rather have dedicated money set aside just for training so I could buy other equipment out of the contractual.
Right.
Large item equipment.
And uniforms and vests, I guess, is the last one I have. What are you thinking we'll need in the upcoming year as far as that goes?
This upcoming year with the new individual I have hopefully starting in April, he's going to need a new vest. We have 2 vests currently in our inventory, and another 4 are set to expire by just the expiration date set in the 5-year span of the life of a vest. So I would like to leave that with the unknown cost. They're about $700-800 a vest. So that would put me in the purchase of about 4 vests.
Okay.
And a vest, that's just the vest without outfitting the vest with the molly or the cover that goes with it is an extra expense. So it's almost $1,000 a vest.
Okay. Okay. Anything else for Chief? Okay, well, thank you, Joe. I think that's what we needed. We will be kind of doing, like I said earlier, we'll be doing our line by line budget exercise next week. But that's what we needed to go through for tonight.
All righty. Thanks, guys. Am I
Thanks, Chief.
dismissed?
You can stay if you want.
Take care, everybody. Have a nice night.
Uh-huh.
All right. Bye.
Hi, Joe.
Thanks.
Vicky, after Dusty, we have just farmers market at 7. Is that right?
That's correct. And Debbie got the email, so she'll be here.
Okay. All right, Dust, how are you?
I'm good. You?
We're pretty good. Just highlighting something on my budget sheet here. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to kind of go through line by line and dig into the budget as a board next week. We just wanted to give an opportunity in case there's any items or questions that anybody had on the specific department lines. Where the heck are you? Yeah.
All over the place, I think. At least it feels that way most days.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'll kick it off, I guess. Anyone else has questions, jump in. And I guess the biggest question is, 5th guy or no 5th guy, and if so, when?
For me personally?
Well, you're the
Just wasn't sure who you were putting it out to first.
No, you.
I right now I'm inclined to hold off. We've been doing really well. The change in personnel has really helped in more ways than one. With me taking over the water, it's allowed to have 3 other guys around working, for the whole day, as opposed to having John and then me take over meeting stuff too. I've been able to work any kind of meetings or phone calls or, management stuff along with the water. And then, so we have 3, if not 4 guys around, whereas when it was before me trying to juggle meetings, all that stuff, and then sending John to do water and having 2 guys to do the remainder of the work, that's really helped out a lot. My other concern right now with that 5th guy is, yes, there are times we could use that person, but there's a lot of times where we don't need it. Especially in the winter. Right now, having a 5th guy, there's 1 or 2 things I can think of when it's snowing, and maybe when we have other winter issues, which we have obviously not had this year again, knock on wood. So having that 5th guy right now really hasn't been, we haven't missed it. So I'm inclined to hold off right now. Spring and summer, when we get busy, a lot busier with, mowing lawns and that becomes obviously that's a 2 to 3 day a week job for 2 guys. Then having another guy might be a little bit more helpful, but I still really only, I guess, anymore view it as a part-time role. And I'm not entirely sure what we would get in a part-time role for that. But I suppose it's maybe worth looking into. But first off, I guess I would say I would hold off for now. Again, if it comes to budgeting that money in other places this year specifically, I think there's a couple more things that'd be much more beneficial to us right now than that 5th person.
Okay, any questions on that specifically before we jump into other DPW stuff from the board?
Am I right to assume that that's not reflected in the budget right now? Is the current budget reflecting a 5th guy?
It's reflecting a 5th guy for half a year, just like we did this past year. So Dusty, to that point then, would you want to budget to hire a 5th guy 6 months into the budget year like we did this previous year? Or are you saying that for the foreseeable future, you don't think a 5th guy will be necessary until something substantial changes in the workload?
Yeah, I guess that's where I would be at, because the time frame I'm seeing that we potentially could use that 5th guy is the spring, summer. And right now for this next year, I don't quite foresee it being necessary. And again, like I said, there's a couple other things that I think we could use in the DPW that would offset needing that 5th guy first.
Okay. Other questions? Just want to make sure I give everyone a chance before I jump into other things. Now, this doesn't need to be changed in the sheet right now, Vicki, but just Dusty and Vicki, last year we paid for the leaf machine out of reserves. And the capital replacement cycle spreadsheet in the Dropbox actually has it planned out to pay every year for the leaf machine out of the reserve account. And you're looking at the salt spreader as a line item. We could also pay for that out of the reserve account if we needed to move some things around, just depending on what ends up happening with that backhoe.
So as of right now, the backhoe is at 64,000. With the assumption, which I have been reassured by multiple parties, that in the last few hours, that's going to jump. Now, on that note, I did talk with the sales rep from John Deere today. That 0% 36-month thing that John Deere has going does not apply to municipalities. So we would not qualify for that because of the municipal discount that we get. However, he has said that the price they have on the 2021s right now, he's willing to work with us a little bit. So hopefully that will at least help. And if the backhoe really goes for 80 to 90,000, which sounds feasible to me right now, from what I've talked with some of the guys that have come down that were interested, that sounds within reason.
What's the sticker on the John Deere?
The sticker right now is 113. But again, he has said that is the starting price, not what he could work down to. He hasn't given me any numbers yet, but
So if we just round down, to 110 conservatively, even if we only get 75, we're looking at 35. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the rough number we had thrown around before was possibly having 35 to 40. So I'm really hoping, and the gentleman from Watertown that I talked to, when I told him that we really needed to get between 65 and 70, basically said to me, well, I would give you that in cash right now for this machine. So I would tend to believe that it's going to go from, at the very minimum, that much.
All right. So between the backhoe, the leaf machine, and the salt spreader and plow, we'll be able to get all three between either the reserves or a line item. I'm trying to keep as much in the reserve account as we can, or I should say I'm trying to take as much out of the reserve account as we can rather than creating a line item spend in the general budget. But we'll see how that plays out. We might be able to spread some of the backhoe, some more of the backhoe over to water as well.
Right. A lot of that, or I believe in the past, that's come out of, at least a portion of that's come out of water. The other thing to go along with that plow and salt spreader is the new dump truck, which is, again, what I was getting at with instead of a employee. The smaller of the two dump trucks we have is tired. The box on the back either needs to be replaced or some major work done to it, which is why I'm in the opinion of replacing it. Now, I don't know, there's not really a dump truck on the auction site right now, but I know the pickup trucks that are older with more miles on this RTI auction site right now are going for big dollars, 20 to 30,000. So if we were able to make part of that back there, I don't know whether that can be put towards it in the long run or what, but there's that.
And we already do have the dump truck scheduled for this year coming out of the reserve account. I have 57,000 is what's scheduled. That's still in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that should be pretty close. I haven't gotten the quote I had on the dump truck was from last year, was I believe for Vicky, I can't remember whether it was 55 or 60 we had talked about. I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
Okay.
But if
okay. So you'll know.
If we're budgeting the salt spreader and the plow differently, I believe the truck itself would be a lot closer to the 50 range. The quote I had gotten last year included at least the plow, if not the plow and the salt spreader.
So then why don't you dust for as soon as you can, before next week would be great. If you can get a refreshed quote on the dump truck, with or without the salt spreader and plow, just so I can have those numbers.
Sure.
And then you're going to meet with the John Deere rep when? Wednesday?
Wednesday at 10 o'clock.
So before next week, you'll know what the deal is on that because the auction will be up too.
Yeah, so the auction is up tomorrow night at 6. And I've talked with the John Deere guy already about the loaner or temporary one until they can get us our brand new one. And he has already let me know that that's not a problem.
Okay, good. I think we can work with that. Anything else for Dusty?
Dusty and I had chatted briefly, I don't have a number, but I've heard talk about DPW doing some of the stormwater work, as part of that work that's out kind of by Seneca Road, Seneca Street area. So I don't know if we need to look for making a line or adding up to a line here for any of that work. When we want to, depends on when we want to schedule that and what that looks like.
We have a storm sewer line, Ben.
That's under DPW, I'm assuming.
No, it's farther down. It's like 80. It's 8140.4.
Oh, okay. Right now it looks like it's just blank, I think. So
No, we have
No?
money. No, hold on.
maybe I'm running into Jess's problem here.
Oh, I haven't put anything because generally I talked to Dusty about this. Generally, that's a board thing that you guys decide what your plans are for the year. And then,
Yeah, that's next week.
yeah.
All right. Then we'll talk about it then.
That's
The other
fill
thing-
it's fill in the blank night.
The other thing I was gonna say is generally when it comes to the backhoe, we go with Casey's percentages, like he's 60% DPW, 40% water. And that's generally what I do with the backhoe expenses.
Yeah, we're probably going to change that.
Okay.
Anything else for Dustin? Going once.
I'll just real quickly give a shout out. Dusty fixed a very, very dangerous situation today in about 15 minutes. There was a tree down, and when I sat down tonight to look at my email, I had received another email about the same tree. So it was just a whole crazy thing, and Dusty made it go away, and it was marvelous.
That was 100% luck today. I appreciate
exactly the wrong response.
Yes,
quiet,
I know.
Dusty.
I appreciate the shout out, but it just so happened that the NYSEG tree cutter guys showed up in the parking lot to file their paperwork, and he goes, "Well, I don't have anything else going on right now. I'll come out and look at it with you." And we got out there, and he goes, "Oh yeah," he goes, "I owe you a favor. We'll take this right now." So that really worked out in our favor.
So good
And while
job
we're-
continuing to have relations with our friends in the industry and way to network that problem and solve it. And that's a good job.
And while we're on the subject, Ben and Dusty, I did get clarification from Guy this afternoon about our authorities to do something like that. So we have a lot more flexibility than I had initially thought. So keep your eyes out for trees which pose an imminent and immediate threat to life and property.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for Dust?
Surely we can work abundance of caution into there.
We can certainly try. All right, Dust. Thanks. Let us know how things go this week with the backhoe.
All right. Thank you very much.
So while we wait on farmers market at 7, Joe mentioned it already. One of the things we need to decide as a board, don't actually have to decide tonight, but we need to decide before next week when we start doing line item things, is twofold. Number one, given budget constraints, sales tax revenue reductions, et cetera, and a desire to not raise property taxes too much, I'm suggesting that we consider a 2% raise for employees this year rather than the customary 3%. So that put that on a shelf. That's topic for discussion number 1. And topic for discussion number 2, which Joe mentioned, and he and I have talked about it a fair bit, and I've also talked to Chris Fox about it in EMS, is Chief Nelson has suggested that we should do away with the customary annual raises for part-time and per diem employees. He was thinking primarily in the police department, but I realized that it would apply to EMS as well. So if we go back, I actually don't have to go back that far, 25 years or so, to a time when DPW was our only department that had any full-time employees other than the front office. It was customary to include raises for all of the part-time employees because we were essentially staffing police and other departments on a full-time hourly basis with part-time employees. So to keep those folks around from year to year, it made perfect sense to give at least a cost of living adjustment. Now that we have full-time employees primarily in EMS, filling in shifts with part-time when needed and when available, and police, as we look to hire that second full-time officer again and do less staffing with per diems, I do think it makes a lot of sense to not include annual raises for the part-time folks. We want to make sure that whatever that part-time pay, that it is scaled appropriately for the industry and fair. If we have competitors, for instance, with EMS, we would look at wage scale at Bangs or Dryden Ambulance or whatnot, make sure that we're fair. But I don't think it's necessary to increase all of the part-time employees' pay by the same percentage that we do annually for full-time employees. We can reevaluate over two or 3 years whether we're still fair with the part-time wages. So those are the two things that I'd like to at least discuss for a few minutes while we're waiting on farmers market, what the board feels about that. And if we make a decision tonight, then Vicki can adjust the budget sheets accordingly. If we need time to think about it, we can, if we want to, discuss by email. But those are two important things for this year's budget.
So I'll just jump in since EMS probably has the most per diem employees. And in general, I think that if Chris is on board, he has a much better grasp, of the motivators behind a per diem employee. It's a little more complex, I think, than police is. But if he doesn't think it'll have a negative impact, then I'm on board with it. My one concern that I think is worth expressing, and doesn't necessarily shift the balance between one alternative or the other, is that the danger with anything like this is that it sort of creates a lag. So if we forget to review it and then in 5 years, we're sort of stuck holding the bag where it's like, now we're way below and we have a bigger jump. So the advantage, I think, of sort of keeping up with it is really that it prevents that scenario. But if we're on top of it as a board, I don't see a huge problem in doing that, especially, in a year like this.
Well, Ben, I think you raise a really good point there. And maybe there's just a way to make sure that the rates are on par, like to do a check-in annually on what the per diem rates are. Or maybe that's more, I don't think that's that complicated, right? Just say, hey, are we at a good rate?
Yeah, to both of those points. So the dynamics are a little bit different between police and EMS. So a lot of our per diem and part-time police officers are, their full-time jobs are with agencies that are not police departments. So they're peace officers, either at Ithaca College or TC3 or the Seneca Nation Indian Reservation. And so in order to maintain their police officer certification in New York State, they need a certain number of hours per year working for a police agency. And so their motivation to be here is to keep their police badge. So the pay is certainly a lesser concern. EMS is a little bit different. But I think, to your point, Ben, this year is a good example where the total property levy, property value levy, total property assessments within the village did not go up by very much at all. So if we time, we can try to be, I'm sure we can get ourselves caught in a wrong situation doing it this way. But if we try to time certain increases with, economic cycles, and obviously sensitive to when things are harder, we want to do less in terms of our budget. When things are less lean, when assessments go up a lot, if there's development whatever the case might be, and we can time those readjustments of some of those wages at that time, then I think it'll be felt less sharply, and give us more flexibility in tighter budget scenarios. Keith or Ben, thoughts?
I think in general, I'm supportive of these ideas. I think I get the sense, though I'm looking forward to kind of a broader sense of that this is going to be a particularly tough year, and so trying to get creative makes a lot of sense. There's a little part of me that worries that I feel like as a board we're quite good at finding ways to trim in ways that don't hurt too much, which is a great skill. But eventually you run out of those, and then have we kind of lost this buffer that we have that we're able to use in these times? It's a bit more of an existential question than like a particular one right now, but that is weighing on my mind a little bit. But in general, I think, if there's a year to kind of be creative, this is that year. At least that's the sense I'm getting. And like I said, looking forward to kind of hearing more about that. So yeah, for now, I'm supportive of the idea.
I think every budget year is always an existential exercise for small municipalities.
Yeah, I think I would back up what Ben said. I think that's I think there's a lot of, I don't know, between it being a tougher time, probably a tougher year. I think there's also I don't know, like I want to be mindful of I don't feel like I have a great sense of kind of the state of our infrastructure, where that's at. And if everyone feels good about that, I think, I'm starting to pay more attention to issues in other places in the country when things break down and the ripple effect it can have. So, doing I wouldn't know where to begin. Some of you might have better ideas than me, but just having at least some sort of a mental audit of some of those things and where we're at, and are we in position to not only, we're trying to survive a pandemic, but what are the other situations that could occur where we're going to need money in the bank? And so that's to me, that's just one consideration when I would agree with what I would agree with the proposal on the table, but in terms of long-term cost savings and how we apply that, that's just one thought.
It also occurs to me that maybe Carver, it's a bit of a carrot to fill full-time positions. By the way, when you become a full-time employee, you get tracked in this direction.
I mean,
Yeah,
I guess I'd be a little bit, if everyone thinks this is going to affect EMS quite a bit, I mean, I guess I have a little bit of concern there, because I think that's already a tough gig. It's already from what you all share, it appears that can already be a tough thing to staff, and it doesn't look like it's going to get easier. So that's certainly something to consider, and maybe other ways to support those positions outside of automatic. Maybe there's more of an incentive program built into those raises or something like that. I am mindful that seems like a job that only gets tougher as each year goes on.
One of the things I did discuss with Chris, which will be a conversation for this summer and fall, when we're putting together next year's EMS budget is I want to look at the wage scale for the full-time EMTs. I think the paramedic full-time wages we've adjusted a few times in the last couple of years, but I don't know that we've given a good look at the EMT full-time EMT wage scale. That one is particularly tough. I think that it's hard to retain good full-timers. If their salary for a full-time position is $15 an hour. I mean, that's ironically, that's not out of line with what full-time EMTs make across New York State. But it is hard when those people are also looking for jobs at Ithaca Fire Department and elsewhere. So some of the other first responder agencies in the area, like IFD, like Cornell, like the airport, they're pulling from the same kind of ability and talent pool that our EMTs come from. I think once you're a paramedic, you're on that track specifically, but EMT seems to have quite a bit of cross recruiting across some of those first response career tracks. So that'll be something we have to look at, I think.
I think that brings up kind of a general, I don't know, philosophical approach almost, about how do we work salaries and having it, when's the right time to think about this, kind of continual percentage increase, and when's the time to think about it more holistically, I think, like you're pointing out, which is to say, looking at surrounding areas, and it's not going to apply to all particular jobs when in the village, but EMTs, specifically you called out, making sure we're kind of keeping an eye at the broader piece as well. And maybe on the per diem side, it makes less sense to always lock in that 2% and have it be a little more flexible so that we're responding to the market kind of as it ebbs and flows and as we have the ability to. And other places, maybe it makes more sense to lock in that percentage. So I think in general, I think the approach I'd like to see is kind of being a little more flexible with our approach so that we're making the right choices and the right trade-offs with who we're trying to attract, where we're having a hard time attracting. I think there are definitely benefits to kind of having that sense of the always up 2%, 3% raise, whatever it is. But I don't know as if it even is beneficial to the village or the employee in all these cases. So just making sure we're kind of really applying the right the right approach to the different situations we have.
Yeah, that makes sense, Ben, too. And also, Roden, I'm cognizant of what it means to be a temporary employee in a lot of different businesses, but not in police and EMS. So certainly nowhere else as a temporary employee would you expect to have the full benefits of a full-time employee, including this notion of an automatic raise.
Right. Indeed. Well, it is 7:00 right on the dot. Debbie is here from the Farmers Market Board to talk about their budget. And let me just pull up the budget sheet for myself to look at.
And do you know what would be helpful, Roden? Can you just name the file so I make sure I'm opening the same one? I struggled with a couple of the past sheets.
I'm looking at the General Water Sewer 21-22 TA worksheet.
Okay.
Jess, there's also a specific one for farmers market.
Yeah.
That has all their accounts. They've done it two ways.
Yeah, I worked on the Excel spreadsheet, the more in-depth budget, and then I tried to put all the numbers together quickly and threw it into your worksheet, and I actually miscalculated, so it's not correct, and I'm sorry about that.
So which sheet should we be looking at then, Debbie? What will we be talking to?
The Excel spreadsheet, it says proposed Trumansburg farmers market budget 2021.
Okay, but this sheet does not have a comparison to the past year, is that correct?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop talking.
No, is everybody able to see the Excel spreadsheet?
I believe so, Debbie. So if you want to just kind of walk us through what you have planned for the market this year, we'll listen.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for supporting the Trumansburg Farmers Market. I tried to simplify it and be very conservative. Last year, the budget was made a lot of promises that we couldn't meet. We couldn't meet even if COVID didn't happen. And so I tried to be more reasonable, and hopefully we'll meet it and get close. If you notice at the bottom, the difference is actually in the positive as opposed to in the negative. I didn't try to even it out, budget it out. And I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding words today. But at the beginning is all the revenue from the pavilion spaces, and all the tents and the day vendors. And I thought I was being really reasonable. We are trying to work harder on advertising and bringing in more vendors this year. And we are hoping that the village will continue with their $5,000 support. And we are invited to ask the town of Ulysses for sponsorship. And I'm not sure how much, but that they will support us, but 2,000 seems really reasonable, and I'm hoping that they'll support us and give us more. And we are, of course, going to have music, and we want to increase the music sponsorship. The musicians suffered a lot last year, and although $150 for each group is not a lot, but at least shows our gratitude to them as opposed to just $100. And we have a committee working on community sponsorships, and actually that's where we talked about at the last meeting. We were trying to get large sponsorships, possibly $2,000 to $3,000 with a commitment to 3 to 5 years. And I'm pretty confident we'll get at least one of them. I'm hoping to get a lot more. So, and we didn't really sell a lot of t-shirts and bags, but it would be nice to sell a bit more. And the SNAP reimbursement is just a wash. We pay out $200 and we get reimbursed $200. So that's why it's on the budget. And with our expenses, again, $150 for 26 weeks of music, and we have to pay for the license, the SCAP. And I averaged out how much we normally have electricity bills there, and the market insurance and supplies. And so basically, you know, I can read everything down, but I was very conservative. We're not going to do a lot of paper advertisement this year. We're going to spend more money on Facebook, and so it's a lot more inexpensive than paper ads and pamphlets. We have all the brochures already printed. Last year was the first year we didn't put time-sensitive information on our brochures, so they can go from year to year. And we're just going to print inserts that will update. One side will be all the vendors, and the other side will be just the music. And we could insert it, and next year we can use the same brochures and do it and update it. And so if we do generate the money, the sponsorship that I believe we are capable of doing, will actually be in the plus. And then we can maybe talk about possibly getting lights for those 5 pavilion that do not have lights. You know, but I'm hoping that we'll actually have a budget that breaks even this year.
Great. Any comments or questions for Debbie from the board?
Just to say thanks for being conservative. That's really appreciated.
It's in my nature. And I would love to be able to, build, upon the farmer's market instead of just, survive. So that's our goal.
Yeah, and I think commercial sponsorships or community commercial sponsorships have a lot of potential. I think as bad as this year has been, there are businesses and companies that have done very well and are looking for philanthropic outlets. And I think a few $1,000s for a whole year of sponsorship to a farmer's market is a very reasonable, if not low ask. So I would consider, all the different places that you could maybe make that ask, and don't be afraid to shoot high.
Hmm.
And if you need the help of a greedy fundraiser, let me know.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And we would like to reap the rewards of everybody's connections. And Shirley Brown is really excited about, promoting and asking. She has big visions for us, and and she's powerhouse. I think she'll actually get a lot of it done too. So should I give her your name?
Yeah, happy to help in that way. Yeah.
Thank you. I really
I'm
appreciate
not sure how many people I know, but I'm certainly willing to ask.
You can have one, as long as you know one or two people. I mean, it really adds up when we're talking big ass, considering what we've brought in the past, it would be actually great success.
Debbie, I'm curious about the art advertisement professional service line. Is that something that's on there because in the past you had need for that, but you're not anticipating any this year?
Not this year. Yeah. I think
Okay.
we're just trying to be very conservative, not run a deficit, and see. I mean, some of the advertisements, we're talking in the future, maybe a graphic designer to help promote, do posters and things like that. So that's where the line is. Would you like me to take it out?
Oh no, and I just wanted to
Mhm.
address it. And then I guess part of where that question comes from is I feel like at the last conversation that we had, where you're thinking about getting some sponsorships and corporate sponsorships, if you're going to be offering them exposure to their brand, how will that be designed? And then I guess I was wondering if you were like, nope, we've got people who will volunteer that skill for us, and
We
don't
do have one
anticipate
person
paying.
that will volunteer for that, but it's good to, realize that some people like to be paid as well. And I, I actually see it as really simple as utilizing their logos. It doesn't have to be a very complicated, plaque or sport sponsorship. It doesn't have to have a lot of design to it. If their logo is recognized, then that's really great for them.
I'll just second what Ben was saying too, is appreciate you kind of stepping in and taking over the role. I know it's yet again another pretty fresh board, and I know you guys have put a lot of jumped right in the deep end and put a lot of effort into this. And I appreciate the kind of conservative nature of it, that we're really trying to aim for the things we can actually get done, see where we stand, noticing that last year was just not anything normal, and then build towards the future that I think we can all get towards. But yeah, setting a good foundation to start from.
That's what my hope is. Absolutely.
And I'll echo that as well, Debbie. I actually, for the life of me, can't remember whether it was last spring or 2019. It feels like 2020 was 5 years long, so maybe it was last spring. But I was fairly direct and fairly terse. I don't know if you were at that meeting. I just remember it was in the village. It was an actual in-person meeting back when we used to have in-person meetings. I was fairly direct and fairly terse with the farmers market folks that night, and basically insisting that some type of a a real business plan to be put together for this. And so it feels like we're moving in that direction. So I appreciate that. And it is something that culturally I would hate to lose for the village, and want to see it not just survive, as you said, but thrive. And when it's busy on a Wednesday night, it certainly looks like it's thriving. But to be able to do so without this occasional tension from the village board, not that we've had much tension in the last couple of years, but I remember some years where there was quite a bit of tension about, how much are we really subsidizing this thing, and will it be subsidized forever? So I'm glad that it's going in this direction, and hopefully, having survived 2020, hopefully this season will be a great one.
Right. Well, ironically, I was probably the only board member that wasn't 100% on board with the plan of growing the salary of the market manager. I didn't, and that was actually one of the reasons why I wasn't sure I wanted to be president of the board, because I didn't want to inherit the burden of something that I didn't think was the best idea. But ironically, we got Natalie, who is amazing. And she really helped us get all our duckies in line. And I pulled a couple of people onto the board that are dynamite, So I'm pretty excited about the new board. And everybody's really engaged. It's amazing. So hopefully this is a new year, we'll see. So we'll see how it goes. But I like to start off small, and I don't like to promise things that I can't deliver. So
right.
This is my hope.
Right. Well, I forget if I mentioned this, was it last week or 2 weeks ago when you were with us, but one of the things I did mention during that, I don't even know if I would dignify it by calling it a rant, but the use of advertising by organizations is really their advertising, and fundraising is kind of the key to survival for a lot of organizations. And it's always felt like the farmers market hasn't made as much effort as it could on those two fronts. So I'm really pleased to see that effort is present now. And I think it'll work. So we will see.
So.
Great. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And so am I assuming that this has been approved?
Well, we actually have a multi-meeting budget process. So tonight is kind of, we met with the police chief and our DPW supervisor, and now you. So we have an understanding of what's included in the numbers. And then over the next 2 to 3 meetings, we actually go line by line and kind of flesh out what we can afford and what we can't. So I don't see a problem with any of these numbers, but we won't know for sure for a little while.
Well, we can definitely tweak it if you do see a problem, but but I did lowball it in order to deliver.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, Debbie, I have one more question. Do we have do you have the number that the town of Ulysses has given in the past? Or Vicki, we have that?
They
somewhere?
never have.
Oh, they haven't. Okay.
No, not that I'm aware of. I've only been on the board a couple of years. But
Not the 9 years I've been here.
Okay. But you said you were invited, and I know they recently joined, the town recently joined as a chamber member, which is encouraging. So.
Well, what I was told was that that when they were trying to generate the budget to support Natalie's salary, that they also talked to the town of Ulysses, and they were totally on board and just asked for someone to come and do a formal ask last August, and nobody did. And so I talked to the town supervisor, and she said, we were waiting. So I will definitely ask.
And have you had an update, like, yes, even in this budget cycle, that they have the same?
I talked to her maybe a month or 2 ago.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I even put, before I put anything on this paper, I make sure that,
Sure.
we can, and they were just waiting for us to ask. And the person that was supposedly to, I guess nobody identified who was going to do the ask. Maybe that happened. I don't know. Like I said, I was not part of that conversation.
That's very encouraging. I'm glad. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay,
All
Good
right,
night.
thanks, Debbie.
thank you.
Okay. Anything else budget-wise? Again, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, I think that what we'll do is we've got a few things based on what we've talked about that Vicky will change. I think from my notes, might tweak a little police contractual, but may wait till next week to do that. But I think we can remove, based on Dusty's comments, Ben, unless you disagree, we can remove the fifth employee number for the 6 months, Vicky, as well as the health and retirement, et cetera. We can adjust for no wage increase for per diems and part-timers. And then we can also look at a 2% raise for all full-timers. And then once that's done, then we'll have a sheet that we can go line by line and build in some assumptions that are hopefully not too far off base, and do that next week and crawl through it. At least the general budget. I don't know if we'll do water and sewer next week or not. Kind of depends on time. So if that sounds good to everyone, unless there's anything else budget related that we want to discuss tonight before we talk about the backhoe.
I just wanted to,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
All right. On the water and sewer, I know Deb has taken a really active role in that in the past, and I have not right now. So I just want to make sure that we're good there, or are there places I need to plug in more diligently?
No, I usually go over water and sewer once we have the wages set, because that's most of it is the breakout of their wages by percentage. Well, obviously, once we have a number for the backhoe, with the exception of snow, I think probably backhoe should be at least 75% water. So we'll tweak that a little bit. And other than that, I can't think of anything. We'll just have to look at. Vicky just plugs in on the sewer piece. There's the annual contractual piece to Camden. So that should be about right. And I know, Vicky, if you'll just double check, we had planned on a 2-year stepped increase to the sewer rates, and we did the first year last year, and this is supposed to be the second year of an increase.
Okay.
We had created we had a targeted number for the sewer rates, and we were going to step into it in 2 years instead of just doing it all at once. So if you can dig up any notes you might have from last year on that, and I know I have some, so we'll compare those.
Question, do you want me to completely delete the column of the 3% raises, or do you want me to leave that with all the adjustments I've made to the other payroll lines?
Let's leave it
Okay.
with the adjustments that we've just discussed.
And my question pertained to the fire budget. So my understanding is that work comes later because they are not on the same budget cycle, but is there a forecasting piece that I should be preparing?
Generally, Jess, I send that in early July and ask that you and the commissioner and the fire chief do that by about mid-August.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our meeting as early in September as we can have. The
Mhm.
towns generally like their numbers a couple of weeks ahead of the meeting.
Mhm.
So,
So for this budget work, is there something that I should be forecasting? Do we take into consideration anything?
no,
Okay.
no, because that budget's been set. Those numbers have kind of
Okay.
been set. So, and they're all filled in.
Okay, great.
Vicky, I'm going to ask that you make a note to start that fire and EMS budget piece in June,
Okay.
because I think we're going to have work to do on the EMS side.
Okay, and in June. And that would reflect what you and I had talked about kind of doing salary lines differently.
Yes.
Okay.
What Vicky's alluding to is these spreadsheets you're looking at. I don't want to hazard a guess as to how far they date back, but they are decades old, not years old. So we're going to revamp some of how this is structured, primarily it has to do with how certain employees' time is spread out across different departments. And so where water and sewer are separate budgetary, they're separate budgets entirely, we do have to spread out employees between, say, general DPW and water and sewer. But somewhere along the lines, I want to say in the late 80s, early 90s even, some of the other employee lines were spread out between, say, fire and EMS and police, and it just doesn't make sense. It's hard to look at how much does health insurance cost for our DPW department when it's spread out all over the place. So we're going to make some of those changes for next budget season. Anything else budget related? Yeah.
Yes, one thing. In this current year's budget, you had made the decision to put 20% of Morgan's pay into a DPW line. Since you're trying to kind of revamp that now to have us, our budget lines individual, do you want me to move her 20% just back to a general line instead of the DPW line? Not a decision you have to make now.
I don't think you need to change anything for this budget process we're in.
Okay.
We'll revisit and revamp and maybe restructure just even the look of the spreadsheets for next year.
Okay, that's fine.
Anything else budget related? Okay, Ben, I think we're trying to sell a backhoe.
Indeed. Yes. So to catch everyone up, we have a backhoe. It is getting to the point where it's kind of needing all of the first round of like major repairs, right? Not just kind of your oil change kind of things. Previously, we had a contract with the idea that we would get a new backhoe every 3 years and kind of continue to pay a regular fee. That has fallen apart with Caterpillar. That program seems to be no longer existing. And so instead, our hope now is to sell the Caterpillar backhoe to recoup enough cost out of it that we can then buy a John Deere, and John Deere has this program instead. And so we can kind of continue the idea there. It is a slight premium, obviously, as you might expect on the program, but it more than kind of pays for itself by not having to deal with kind of maintenance and all the overhead of scheduling that and having the backhoe out of service for those periods and so forth. So right now the backhoe is on auction. As Dusty mentioned, it closes tomorrow at 6. I guess the number he had said just earlier was around 64,000. It's for sale for. We're hoping to have that go up to 70, 75. Dusty had said maybe 80 or 90 even. So whatever we can get for it, obviously the better. But what I'd like the board to discuss is declaring the current Caterpillar backhoe of no further use pending that sale. And that allows Dusty, should we get a number that we like enough, to sell that and actually finish that transaction once that goes through. So I think I covered it all. Anything else to add, Roden?
No, so the only thing is a little bit tricky when you declare something of no further use, you're not supposed to use it anymore. So we're dancing in between blades of grass a little bit. Wouldn't it be nice to dance in between blades of grass instead of flakes of snow? So what we would need to do is we would have to have a resolution to declare the current Caterpillar backhoe of no further use to the village, effective, pick a day, Thursday or Friday, pending the sale of pending the village's acceptance of the sale at auction due to close tomorrow. Vicky, you're on mute, unless you're not talking to us. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get an actual date from Dusty. But yeah, why don't we go with Thursday?
And then I guess the question would be, he mentioned something about the loaner. So I guess it would
Yeah.
depend on when we would get the loaner.
I can also vamp for a second. I can see if I can send him a text.
Yeah, see if he knows when that loaner might be available.
Yeah.
And we could, I suppose we could word it as declared of no further use, effective on or after, pending the accepted pending the acceptance of the sale of, or something like that.
I mean, if the declaration is contingent, we don't really need to give a date, do we? If that language is acceptable, it seems like that should just carry the whole thing.
Right. We could say pending the acceptance of the sale at auction and the receipt of a loaner vehicle.
That seems like a good way to thread it.
Okay.
I did send him a text, but I don't know if he's sitting right by his phone. I haven't gotten anything just yet. So,
Well, why don't we word it that way? The only way it becomes a problem is if it's a problem, if there's a problem.
all right. So I'll move that we declare the Caterpillar backhoe of no further use pending the acceptance of a sale by auction and a loaner backhoe.
Okay, we have a
A
motion. Do we
second.
have a second? There's a second. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, anything else for public discussion, budget or otherwise? If not, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a vast number of personnel issues.
So moved.
Okay,
Very,
have a
very
second.
reluctantly seconded.
And a reluctant second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, give me a second to stop the recording and get us